Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Please note, this episode contains some explicit language. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits, and I'm here to ask you what you get if you cross Rodgers and Hammerstein's only television musical with the star of the British production of Hairspray. And of course the answer is Cinderella's Ball, which is a, frankly, not very funny but highly appropriate riddle in this run-up to Christmas. And welcome back to Musical Talk for this week's episode, where we're going to be hearing the second part of my conversation with talented musical director, composer, and indeed creative and academic James Robert Ball. You'll probably remember that last week I was talking to James about his musical Bang Out of Line, the contemporary adaptation of Othello as a musical, and also a great deal about Stephen Sondheim. And in this week's conversation we'll hear James talking more about Stephen Sondheim, but also about a range of musicals, everything from Rent to High School Musical, with plenty more in between. So, without further ado, and rather a lot of nothing, well, we did mention Othello, so we might as well get Shakespeare in early. Let's continue that conversation with the very talented and very nice James Robert Ball. Musical Talk. James, thank
Hello.
you. You came back
I did.
For a second week. Now, last time we were talking about your Othello musical, if you like, Bang Out of Line. We touched on... we finished with the Cornish anthem from your sort of 15-minute comic farce.
Yeah.
And both of which came out of your studies at Goldsmiths. People who go to Goldsmiths want to write musicals. But very few people are born wanting to write musicals. So tell me, how did you fall in love with musical theatre? And can I say that I've had many answers to this, but quite often it's my parents played tape of show X in the car as we went on holiday or something.
I think my one is school. We did Les Mis in my fifth year of high school. Oh, we do Old Money, so that's GCSE year for you youngsters.
Yes.
And that really kind of opened my eyes to it. I was Keys 1, and so quite involved in the rehearsal process, playing piano for it. And that really kind of opened my eyes to what musical theatre could be. I suppose you receive this notion that musical theatre is light or fluffy entertainment.
That's just a popular conception.
Yeah, and it's although it can be, and I feel that conception is wrong, but it's a very prevalent one that we can't really ignore. Yeah. Whatever you think of Les Mis, it's not light.
No.
and I loved it as a 15-year-old.
In the tomato, isn't it?
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, and actually, our Valjean was Harton of Harton Hook we were talking about earlier.
Fantastic. Yeah, one of the great producers of musical shows which you can catch anywhere across the country and show it.
Definitely. And also a fine tenor that he doesn't get to show off as much as he normally does, but he's a good singer.
And who we interviewed for One Small Love Story, which we've been talking about before we went on air.
Yeah.
So it was the school put it on. So why did you volunteer to be in it if you weren't necessarily interested in musical theatre? Because actually there's a world of difference between being interested in it.
Oh, I think it was the thing that everybody did. The music department wasn't large enough to have a subset of musical theatre people. Everyone pitched in and got involved.
And how old were you for this?
I was 15 or 16, I think.
Oh, right. I mean, forgive me, in my experience, it's relatively late to be falling in love with.
Yeah, I think so.
Had you been interested in theatre before musical theatre?
No, I was a horrifically shy child, like painfully shy, so I couldn't have imagined doing that. I think I did a few theatrical things that were very much the exception to the rule, the kind of stuff that you... in primary school I was Jesus and Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, you started at the top then?
Yeah, massively.
You like the superstar bit?
I liked that. I didn't really have to sing. I just had to kind of stand there with arms open, Titanic style at the end. I know he's getting crucified, but at that point I didn't really understand the significance of that. Yeah.
But did you get taken to theatre? Was your theatre-going family? Were you dragged to Panto?
Oh yes, definitely Pantos.
Oh, right, so you did see musical theatre as a child?
Yeah, I suppose I don't think of it like that, but yeah, it was always like that. My mum was musical, although she wouldn't admit it, and Dad was always involved in the Scout Pantos. So yeah, and my gran also. She was a pub singer around Manchester way. So there's something bubbling there underneath the surface.
Certainly a lot of musical influences in lots of different ways. It feels like there was a bit of an aggregate of this and a little bit of that.
Yeah, lots of bits and bobs.
So, Les Mis came along, you enjoyed it. What next? More school shows? I mean, when did you get sufficient... I mean, mid-teens is a very good time to get interested in something because people get zealous about all manner of whatever their passions are.
Sure.
Did this quickly become your passion?
Yes.
Or were you also a hang glider or something, and this came second?
No, but by that time I was definitely onto music, and then within music it was turning into just musical theatre. Mainly musical theatre. Yeah, I remember making the journey across Manchester. I was from East Manchester, going down to Altrincham to spend my winnings from the music competition at school and buying the Les Mis music book. And I think that was a symbol of all kinds of things, like my freedom, but also my freedom of choice to be into something. My parents were very supportive in everything, which meant that we did lots of different things. I've got 2 younger brothers as well. So up until the age of, I guess, around 12 or 13, I was a very serious gymnast, like several times a week. I had to kind of decide in the end what to go for, and I'm here today. It was the music, which is how I've got into theatre, definitely the music side.
So would you call yourself a devotee of musical theatre by 16?
Yes, I'd say so.
Because you already had the sort of musical underscoring going on, the wider musical interests.
Yeah.
I suppose what I'm trying to say is, where is the leap from I like music and here I am in musical theatre, which I like, to I want to write this, I want to do this. This is now what I want my life to be about.
Okay.
And that is a step.
Yes. So when we're talking about like 15, 16, that was very much just things that are happening to me, and I'm deciding what I like or dislike. The point of change, I think, was probably a High School Musical at York, which I was invited to co-MD. Again, it happened to me rather than me choosing to do it necessarily. And I guess that was a really formative moment that made me think, okay, I would do that again. And
because musical direction is a door in, isn't it?
Yeah. A kind of conceptual door for me to think about musicals really seriously, no longer as the light entertainment, but as something that has to have an awful lot of thought, a lot of understanding, a lot of skill to create. What led on from that was another production at York of Rent.
Can I say, what different shows?
Yeah, quite different shows. And Rent was definitely a formative moment for me in lots of different ways. It was just a really good group of people. I don't want to put us on the same kind of par, but I read about West Side Story and how just the right group of people who are excelling in their field get together and it just kind of happens. Our director, Joe Houghton, was incredible. He's gone on to great things. Producer Polly Ingham, also incredible. And the cast were great. One of our guys went off into Mamma Mia. We've got like what has turned out to be a really successful group.
The musical director was pretty smart.
That's
I said it, don't worry. You don't have
that's
to
off the record. But I was really proud of what we did. It's a great show anyway. It's got a lot of integrity, and I think we did that justice. It's not. I don't think it's too much for me to say that. I think we did that justice, and that was what kind of was the final nail in the coffin, if that's the right expression.
I think when we're talking about Jonathan Larson, it's almost a slightly
good Lord.
Unfortunate phrase. But let's talk about your slide into Sondheim, because many people say that Larson was the first of the obvious heirs of Sondheim, although regrettably, as you know, he didn't make it, as it were. But were you aware of Sondheim musically before Rent, or was Rent a transition piece? Was it a feeder?
Feeder into Sondheim. I think Sondheim may have come first at Edinburgh Festival. One year there was a production of Company in C venues -1. I forget the company.
It was about 2008, I think you were saying.
Oh, 2008, okay, yes.
Or thereabouts, anyway.
Or thereabouts. And that had a tremendous effect on me. I saw that several times during its month run. And that was my gateway drug, I suppose. And I ended up doing that Company as my dissertation piece at York, including a production of it in the student performance area.
So what did you study at York University?
It was music, straight music,
Yeah.
air quotes around straight. So they're quite a left-leaning music department, as music departments go. And so they were quite supportive of me pursuing musical theatre as a rigorous academic project.
I think when you say left, are you suggesting liberal against conservative, perhaps, rather than...
Oh, well, yes. I suppose I'm conflating those two ideas. Yeah, liberal. They were set up quite intentionally. It's not conservative, no. It was set up quite intentionally to do something different than the other departments were doing. And so we look at they were the first half of Gamelan and all that kind of thing. They're very open to new ideas.
Fantastic.
So what I did was a queer reading of Company, quite
Interesting.
yeah, quite a primitive angle. It was my undergrad dissertation. I would do it differently if I were to do that same topic now, but that was married up
Married up a little.
married up a little to the actual performance.
Right, that's interesting. Can I ask? Forgive me.
Yeah, go for it.
Was the text you were using for that the early version of Company, or the one they've sort of reverted back to now, where there is actually the gay reference?
Oh yeah, it was with the gay. It would mention the gay reference.
That was hard to believe, but that was considered relatively controversial when it came back.
Yeah.
Even 15 years ago.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yes.
It's controversial to me now. I mean, homosexuality is not controversial to me, but that little tiny passage of a small scene is quite interesting, just in the fact that it crops up. I'm trying to think now. Is it the only reference? One of maybe a handful of references in all of Sondheim's output to homosexuality, and it's not even him that's written it. That's George Furr.
Until Bounce.
Until Bounce, of course. Yes, Bounce. I'm thinking this is one obscure reference in Frogs. That's where my mind's going at the moment. Hipty-dipty intellectuals and so on.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, and then there's the hidden stuff. Everybody loves Louis, of course.
Yep. So it's all bubbling under, but that's quite out there, I suppose.
Well, for 1970, it absolutely was. We could also see why it was cut.
Yeah.
The world wasn't quite ready for that, I think.
And I think in my thesis, it was how sometimes music and lyrics destroy the notion that marriage is the best thing,
Yes.
which is kind of obvious to us now, maybe listening to it. But
And anyone who's ever watched The Marriage.
yeah.
I'd like to roll back just a little bit then to your musical direction,
Okay.
which you were doing presumably in your teens for Rent and High School Musical.
Yeah, I suppose late teens.
Very different shows, but I know from what we were talking about before we started recording, but actually you hold a great deal of affection for both shows.
Oh, gosh,
and they
yes.
should not be written off. So there's going to be a lot of people who are a little bit snooty about High School Musical. I'm not one of those people, actually. Well,
Okay.
I've seen the film and I've seen the stage show, and I enjoyed them both. I preferred the stage show, I must say. Why do you think people are sneery, and what is good? And what is... what makes High School Musical something that's worthwhile? By the way, I agree already, but you can now lay the facts on.
Well, I think people potentially have a reaction against it because it's a film for kids at all. So you're going to kind of turn your nose up. Secondly, it's very happy.
Yes.
So you think, how can that possibly be intelligent? It's very happy. In order to kind of MD a show, you have to really dig into the music and understand it in order to express that to a cast who potentially don't read music, especially in a university setting. And so to dig into some of these harmonies, I forget the name of the song, but it's one of the new ones for the stage show rather than for the film.
Yes, because it was an enhanced score in that sense, isn't it?
Yeah. The harmonies are quite complex, the quartal harmonies, and I think there was a moment of 7/8 and stuff. It's not dull. It's not completely boring, and even when it's more traditional, it's kind of serving a purpose. We were talking last time about kind of less literalism, less realism, and I think Disney treads a very, very intentional path in between those two places. I'm thinking the song Status Quo. It sounds a bit more right. Where it's all these groups of high school kind of cliques around different tables. Maybe it seems innocuous, and maybe I'm overreading it, but this becomes an unreal space and representational. So just because it's built out of what might be cliche building blocks doesn't mean it's not kind of making commentary.
Almost, I thought, though, with the ability to actually withdraw from that, even that heightened realistic world. I mean, you get inner monologues as well, don't you? You certainly do on the film.
Sure.
And if I remember rightly, and it may have just been a production I saw, but I seem to remember there was, talking about queer theory, a slightly enhanced Ryan interpretation. Ryan and Sharpay, of course, being the speech marks, very cheerful villains.
I think I would read it the other way around, that maybe the film version toned it down a little bit from where it was. I think that's in the text. It was a Disney made-for-TV movie. So maybe slightly different from what we might see as a Hollywood film. It started off on the Disney Channel, so that's obviously going to be quite a... Well, no, not obviously. Reject that kind of thing. I don't think there is a problem with it. He's not doing anything wrong. This is the character Ryan, I think we're talking about. He's just wearing scarves. It's fine. Obviously, on a stage setup, especially in a university situation, we kind of played that up. His wardrobe maybe gave him away a little bit more, but that it doesn't maybe detract at all from the points. One of my least favourite things about it, this is from a queer angle, is the intelligent composer girl, who's amazing, and then Ryan, who's the subtextually gay character, seem to get kind of bumped together at the end. It's like, everyone's got to get off with somebody, and they can't possibly get off with the kind of people that they probably want to get off with, so we'll put them together and they'll be safe in their own little box. So maybe I kind of reject that a little bit.
At least 2 further films, which I've not seen.
I saw most of the second. Maybe I should watch them. I wonder if I can find them at Goldsmith's library.
I'll lend them to you.
Oh, thank you.
But I haven't yet watched 2 or 3.
Right.
I'd be very interested to hear your views, but it may be that that's one of the things it explored. Who knows? Yeah, so neither of us actually think it's a write-off at all.
Oh, no.
I have one friend who thinks it's just the last word in cynical musical writing.
Okay.
And there is an element of manipulation in it, and I think we were talking about manipulation last week. But funny enough, I think it's such a frothy piece that I find that less... I don't feel that I'm being asked to feel real emotion about it very much, if that makes sense. Or rather, I'm in a kind of sort of... I'm coasting in an emotionally neutral position, so I can enjoy it without it. It doesn't pluck at my heartstrings in any way. I don't worry about the characters.
Now, the way that you made me think about that makes me think it's quite insidious. If it's trying to make you not feel and just sit there and consume, I suppose I'm less in favour. But
I think consumption is very much a part of it.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think there's a certain skill for the writers, many writers, it's a kind of collaborative thing. It's a strength of their craft that they're able to engage with these emotions, which maybe are not the emotions that we adults feel on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully not.
Yes.
And actually find some truthful resonance for its intended audience. Let's not deny that we're not really the intended audience.
I couldn't agree.
Bearded males. Yes. So I guess it's more about our outlook as an audience, whether we view it cynically, and therefore as a cynical piece, or whether we view it optimistically as an optimistic piece of joy. Why not?
So, Rent?
So Rent is also joyful.
I believe there's a queer reading of that as well.
Just a small one. I wrote an essay on Rent as well. York Music Department were very nice to me, very tolerant, about how Rent, as an adaptation of La Boheme, is kind of bolder with its statements on queer theory, particularly with its trans character Angel. I suppose my argument with Rent that I kind of disagree with maybe most people on is that I like the ending where Mimi doesn't die. I know some people feel cheated by that. I definitely understand. And then there is the, again, cynical reading that she's probably going to die a little bit down the line anyway because she's suffering quite badly.
They feel cheated?
I've heard that said. People have said that to me.
Because they have an expectation that a character will die or should die.
In that she kind of dies and then comes back to life. That's how it feels. It's a bit of feels like a tack on. Rather than if she didn't die at all, I think maybe it would be better for us. But maybe intellectually, I quite like it in that she doesn't die, but Angel does, and that's not out of some kind of hatred, but rather that Angel's death arouses such a profound feeling of empathy for this character that if we think about the average Broadway audience, probably going to be middle class and quite well off, and maybe not thinking about these kind of people very much.
West End too, of course.
Yeah. So hopefully these kind of people will have felt something really strongly about a trans character, about someone that's outside of their experience, and potentially they have bigoted opinions about. And so instead of giving that to Mimi, that pathos, he's given that to the trans character, which I think is the main theoretical difference, perhaps, between Rent and La Boheme.
I mean, that's interesting. I haven't actually sat down to analyse that, so I'm genuinely intrigued by that.
I'll send you my essay.
Yeah, well, I like the idea of an adaptation being free enough to be able to try and do something else and give you some more modern resonance.
Yeah. In Labo, you do have the characters Colin A and Shonard, if I'm pronouncing those right, who become in Rent Colin's and Angel Dumont Shonard. And that relationship is pretty much there subtextually in Labo M. Whereas it's made completely superliminal, if we want to use a big word, in Rent. That is very much one of the points of Rent.
People can't see you, but you're very expressive when you speak. And so the superliminal, you actually rose your hands to the level at which... to the sublime, in fact. Two very, very different pieces, and yet with enough intellectual content in very different ways to allow you to write essays on and bring something to the the musical direction. So, I mean, forgive me, from that point of view, could you do a compare and contrast on Rent and High School Musical? As it was so early on in your career, and in fact subsequent to each other, I suspect.
My comparison is the subject matter of Community. And throughout both pieces, communities are broken apart and stigmatized or rewarded, and then at the end we kind of find a grander community. And with both of those shows, with slightly different audiences, the point is not just to do that on stage, but to kind of envelop the audience with that. For High School Musical, it's a morality thing for youngsters, I suppose, to be inclusive and to feel included. Whoever you are, we see the modern thing of Glee is also doing that kind of thing. Rent is maybe the 10 years later, where us bohemians still want to feel like we belong somewhere. People who are stigmatized if they're suffering with HIV/AIDS or in some way undesirable to mainstream society, feel included and create this new home. So I feel that's our connection.
Do you ever feel that Rent has its own best before date on it, though, purely because it reflects a very specific decade and a half of Western culture?
I think, like all things, it's probably got a best before date, and then it'll come back and it'll be fine.
Yeah. So when cream becomes sour cream, and you buy it again.
Absolutely. So once we're we're almost there already into 90s nostalgia.
Oh, indeed, yes.
Yeah. I think it'll be a lot more comfortable. I don't know, we're in a bit of a grey area where a true modern adaptation of Rent is not quite necessary yet, but it's also, maybe we need that slightly, so we're in a funny place,
We had that odd Rent a few years ago, didn't we, with
the
Rent remix.
Remixed.
Yeah, which was, it was an attempt to fiddle with the music without anything else, in a strange way. I mean, obviously it was much more than that, but mistimed, I think. But
maybe too soon.
Yes.
Maybe too soon.
But that's not the only musical direction you've done. When did you land on The Town?
Wonderful Town.
Wonderful Town. Oh, I'm so sorry. I've got my town's muddled.
Yes. Now, we hadn't heard of it either. Wonderful Town is another Bernstein musical. As I say,
Comden and Green book?
It's Comden and Green. Yep. Comden and Green lyrics, and I think there's another book writer. I'm forgetting it. But it's been revived rather celebratedly, and I think that's how we got to it. Was Simon Rattle's version with Audra McDonald in one of the lead roles. It's quite a lot like Rent, set in the same place, set in Greenwich Village, New York.
Different time, surely.
Very different time. Very different time. Kind of I guess
50s.
50s. I can't remember now whether it's set earlier than that. I think it may be the first half of the 20th century, but written in the 50s, and very, very light in terms of subject matter.
Yes, this is Bernstein more in his operetta mood, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. But what intrigued me about the piece, having to really dig into it to put it on, and to put it on in a university setting. This was actually this wasn't kind of for fun. This was my actual degree. So I had,
was it? Oh right.
Yeah. This is an academic exercise. The music department put this on. John Stringer kind of masterminded it. The way it works at York, in your first year, the first term of first year, you're part of a grand project which binds everyone together. And in your third year, you can be part of the organisation of that project and be marked on it formally. And so that was my third year. And because I had a musical theatre experience, they picked me out as a director for it. Not that I had directorial experience, much less of a cast of... How many was it in the end? I think because it was an academic piece, we had a cast of 30, maybe an orchestra of. I don't know. We had 100 people involved, basically.
Which is a big show.
Which was a big old show. So the traffic alone was crazy. But it's a really beautiful piece and really quite moving and very good for students who are just arriving in a new city, because that's what the two girls are doing as they arrive in New York, finding it difficult, and then ultimately making a new home.
Yes.
Home tends to be a bit of a theme of my analysis of these things.
Well, it's where the heart is, and if shows aren't about anything, if they're about anything, the heart would often be one of them.
Yeah, a bit of an illustration of that of Bernstein doing that in the music is the girls sing a song "Why Oh Why Ohio."
Which sounds like a vaudeville number from the title.
Yeah, pretty much. It's "Why did we ever leave Ohio?" And underneath it, there's a kind of cowboy bass line, donga 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 donga. And then you might not notice it, kind of subconsciously throughout this piece, at the right moments, Bernstein is bringing back this cowboy bass line to echo home. But then also, interestingly, the guy falls in love. He kind of thinks he's fallen in love with a type, and the lead female is not that type. And so he's singing about
Miss Jones, without your glasses, you're beautiful.
And so he's singing about this type that he thinks he likes, but underneath, the music that is tied into Ohio is actually chugging along.
Bernstein is another way into Sondheim.
Of course.
You seem to have sort of stumbled across quite a number of the Sondheim acolytes or compatriots
well, it's hard to walk around them, you have to fight through the people who worked with Sondheim.
That's fair. Which obviously is a tautology. But did he give you any insights? Because you said you were already dabbling with Sondheim on the side at this stage of your sort of life and
Oh, definitely by this point, yeah. I was already working on my dissertation. I suppose Bernstein gave me analysing Bernstein gave me a way into analysing Sondheim.
Yes.
And maybe an understanding of the sound world and what came before Sondheim.
Do you think Bernstein is at all representative of that?
I think Bernstein is also pushing the envelope.
Yes, I do too.
But he's pushing the envelope before Sondheim pushed that envelope further again, just in terms of time. Yeah. I mean...
But the difference, I think, is Bernstein, my understanding is, has... had a love and a resonance and a reverence for and with all these previous styles, particularly Gilbert, funny enough. I think the big difference is that Bernstein was a fan of Gilbert. I know it always comes down to Gilbert with me, I'm so sorry, but is a fan of Gilbert, and Sondheim is not a fan of Gilbert.
But if I may make a big abstraction about Gilbert and Sullivan, is that one element they have is maybe a recitative and then an aria, which is maybe not quite fashionable anymore, or kind of Sondheim doesn't do that.
No, but
not
in
the same way.
It lives in an opera.
Yeah, and Bernstein definitely does that. Even in Wonderful Town, which is very jazz influenced score. I think there's a song called Go Home, I think that's what it's called. It starts off with this recitative, which intriguingly involves some complex harmonies. So it's doing recitative and aria in the same way that Gilbert and Sullivan are doing, or in the same way that Why Not? Bach is doing in his oratorio.
Not contemporary with these.
No. We're going back a bit now. In his oratorios, so he's reimagining this staple of songwriting, that we would have something that's more wifty-wafty, thinking about things, and then we're going to make a statement in our aria. But what he's doing is adding in crunchy harmonies with semitones that you wouldn't imagine doing if you were Bach.
Less wifty-wafty.
Much less wifty-wafty.
I'm learning a lot from your terms.
Yes, these are the academic terms. And then also if it's the song I'm thinking of, he's then presages. Could it be? Yes, it could. The underscore of that, the cross rhythm, which maybe in its way presages stuff in Sondheim. Have I Got a Girl for You? I don't know why I'm saying this, but I just find it interesting that there's always a connection to what came before, but then there's always a break.
That's an interesting sentence again, which I want to sit down and analyse later.
Maybe always is the contentious point of it.
Okay, that's a song by Irving Berlin, he said flippantly and on the side. It's interesting to me, actually, funny enough, that your musical, if I may call them your musical influences, or so they seem to be from the way you've described things, either madly contemporary, by contemporary I mean the last 30, 40 years, and a few what are considered to be highbrow practitioners of the past, but you haven't mentioned, the great interwar writers, Cole Porter, Gershwin, Kern. I mean, we touched on Kern, but only by accident, Irving Berlin, people like that. Is that, that branch of the Great American Songbook, is that a closed door to you? Or is it part of the world that you think was fine for its time, but really has very little still to give?
I think I cherry pick from that era. I do go for Rodgers and Hammerstein. I think, in contrast to yourself.
Yes. And it was all going so well.
for certain reasons. And then...
although they're a different generation, of course. They're sort of war...
They're a bit later.
41 onwards.
Yeah.
Gershwin won't have heard of Rodgers and Hammerstein. No. You would have heard of Rodgers and Hart.
And then again, I would take Gershwin, but I'd leave Cole Porter.
Would you?
Usually. I think it's maybe a taste thing, and I certainly wouldn't deny an indirect influence just by being influenced by people who were influenced by them. Whether any of us want to admit to these influences or whether we'd reject that, I think they can happen without our knowledge.
Ira Gershwin, the lyricist. The reason I ask is because Sondheim obviously dabbles in pastiche using Ira Gershwin when he's doing a... Well, so it appears to me that when he's doing a pre-war style pastiche, he'll go for an Ira Gershwin lyric rather than a Cole Porter lyric.
Okay.
He does not quote Porter, he does quote Gershwin. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm talking Ira here.
Yeah, it might depend how far pre-war you'd...
Well, of course,
you're going.
There's a lot of pre-war, isn't there, if you go back historically.
I'm thinking the Roman and Greek stuff is more kind of patter comedy in that sense. Coward, maybe. I don't know whether you'd say sometimes influenced by Coward.
Well, he wouldn't say so.
No.
Quite categorically. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum is Sondheim doing Greek and Roman.
Yeah. And then Frogs as well is this really tight, kind of unbounded lyrical flair. Whereas in a different kind of show, he doesn't let himself be so erudite with his rhymes.
So we've got to your musically directing. You're at York. You finished York with your final project, Wonderful Town. What then? Did you immediately say, right, Goldsmiths, here I come? Did you sit down and write a few shows yourself? Because I know there's at least a couple in the canon that we haven't mentioned from James Robert Bourne. Sure.
Well, I think the missing link is Red Snow, which is a show I was writing actually kind of on and off from GCSE kind of year. I didn't take it very seriously then. It got reimagined as I grew up, and it grew up with me in that way.
But you had the kernel of it, the kernel of the idea.
Yeah. It was me and a mate. It was kind of a GCSE distraction. I think the kernel of the idea was the idea of a musical where there isn't a lead part, because it was called Communism the Musical. So everybody was equal.
It just used to be called an ensemble piece.
An ensemble piece, yes.
Right into the wood.
But, the singular wood. But yeah, as it grew up, it got more serious. It got more Les Mis, I suppose. A bit more of a kind of chronicle, a fictional chronicle of life under the Soviet regime. And I had the great fortune that the York drama department, in fact, nothing to do with music, put their faith in me to have that put on. I think that ended up being the last project at York, because it was the summer term of my third year, which was an incredible experience for me. I'd never had. In fact, I'd written a school song in high school, which the first years sang on Founders Day.
This is Merrily We Roll Along. By the way, you do know that. Behold the fields of tomorrow, or hills of tomorrow.
But other than that, I hadn't had exposure to like actually having people sing or perform stuff that you've written, which is really important as a writer. It
does fill the soul, doesn't it?
And it kind of crushes it as well in its own way, because if you spend 2 months even on a university project and you have to learn your lines by heart, you obviously have to understand those lyrics. So the bits that don't quite match together, and the bit where you've had to invent the word flopula because you can't think of anything to rhyme with the word popular.
No one would ever write a song with that title.
The song popular. Well, yeah. Gosh. No, that was a song about the world's most popular tuberous crop.
Oh right, okay.
As in the potato. Yeah. So it was tongue in cheek anyway. I think that's how we got away with that particular rhyme.
Do you? I take it wasn't absolutely doom and gloom of the Soviet regime. It was a light-hearted gallop through the vicissitudes of life. No.
Probably not. It, again, in the Les Mis vein, it was doom and gloom, but then peppered with some lightness,
as it has to.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the fantastic musical? It's almost legendary in the sense I can find. It has almost no presence online. Iron Curtain.
No.
Which the Royal Scottish Academy did in 2007 at the Edinburgh Fringe, and I was lucky enough to see, and ostensibly it was about the Soviet Union, I think in the 50s, sort of kidnapping two appalling, failing American songwriters to put on a Broadway show kind of thing in the Kremlin. It was a send up, but it was fantastic. The version I saw was... It's the show I would most like to see again, having only seen once.
Okay.
There is I cannot find a recording of it. I can't find anything on YouTube. I can't even find references very much online. It's there, but really, it's like a footnote in musical history.
All right.
And it's fantastic. And I'm only mentioning it because you read Snow and the Soviet Union, etc., etc. I mean, this is not a Les Miserables piece. It is Les Jollies.
Yes. I don't know why, but I find that kind of Soviet propaganda aesthetic really powerful, really appealing. At least in part because it's so dark underneath its bright, shiny exterior.
It's the smiling face of evil.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated by Russian history, largely because it's so mad, so kind of ecstatic with your Tchaikovskys and your art style, and so desperately dark as well.
And does one beget the other? The greater the suffering, the greater the creativity as an outlet. I
wonder if there's the symptoms of one thing. I'm not entirely sure what. No. Some kind of character of soul.
A displacement.
Displacement. Yeah.
I mean, this is neither the time nor the place to really investigate that. And I suspect
the history of
even
Russia.
with and I mean this absolutely sincerely, your great intelligence, this may not at this moment be.
Maybe we're not the right people to be discussing this.
So Red Snow was well received.
Yeah, I think so. We made a lot of money because there were no rights to be paid. We had a lot. Had some really thoughtful responses to it. Some genuinely kind of helpful, constructive criticism from people who wanted to offer that, and I've really benefited from that kind of thing.
Good to have that.
And then some nice kind of things to build you up as well.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an unnerving thing when people come up and tell you made me cry so much, and that's a good thing.
Yes. Yes, it is when they're talking about your piece.
Yeah.
Not just upon seeing you in the street.
But yeah, there are a few people who were tangentially connected to this history, who I think we did a good job by in terms of the production as well as the writing. I think we managed to do it justice and touch those people. So I think that was quite nice for us.
So, all the while, you've had this sort of increasingly developed love for Stephen Sondheim and his work. So, we finished your time at York. We've tackled Goldsmiths, your first year there, when you were creating and writing, and you came up with or developing Bang Out Blind. But you're there still doing a PhD on Stephen Sondheim. How? I've known people who said I couldn't possibly study English literature because it would ruin my appreciation of reading. I don't quite buy into that myself, but I understand it. Is there a danger that you came to praise Caesar, but now you're burying him?
Yeah, definitely. But
Shakespeare's done very well out of us tonight, hasn't he?
I think, not wishing to bury him too soon, it's a very loving burial.
It was a very tender cremation.
Beautiful eulogy, hopefully. So, what?
Everybody ought to be unmade. Sorry.
Unmade. Oh goodness. You're full of them this evening.
Yes, I'm full of something.
Yes, there is a big risk, and not even a risk, it's definitely happening and going to happen more, that the curtain is pulled back and there he is and he's pulling levers, and he kind of didn't want anyone, that's not really the point necessarily, to go and see him doing his workings, and maybe that takes the shine off Sondheim worship as a credo, but I then now think that that's a very good thing, that although we should love and cherish Sondheim, it shouldn't be blind.
Yes.
It should be because of specific things, not ever because of a kind of blurry-eyed appreciation of genius without understanding necessarily what that genius is.
There is the distinction to be made. I think it's actually the most important distinction, and it's so often blurred in modern life, partly because there's so many horrible things, but people seem utterly unable to detach the personality of a person from their professional work. I will give a very, very small example, without trying to offend anybody, but I'm aware of demands in a public library that books by Rolf Harris on art be removed because of his recent public fall from grace. Now, it's not for me to make a final decision on that, but from my point of view, there is a difference between... I'm told, actually, the library didn't do so on the grounds that the book is about art.
Yep.
And nothing at all to do with anything else. It's not about him as a personality. It may not be a good example, but it's the kind of thing. I'm not in any way drawing any parallels with anybody else, certainly not Stephen Sondheim, but the character of Stephen Sondheim, as portrayed in biographies, is very distinct. And then there is the work of Stephen Sondheim, which is also very distinct. One begats the other. But how easy is it to differentiate the appreciation of the individual and the appreciation of the individual's work?
It's not very easy, but it's absolutely vital.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You may proceed.
that has been... I've only very recently started this PhD, and that has...
You're still on P.
No, sorry, just P, just the first stick. And that has been my first stumbling block initially, because I was definitely confusing the man with his art, and whether my job is to work out that he is... I mean, I should say that my thesis is that Sondheim's work is in some way postmodern. I know you might want to argue with me about that. People do, but that's fine.
Not as a theory.
Not as a theory. We'll see once we've seen what that means and the point of it. Whereas initially, I was trying to prove that he was in some way a postmodernist, which I think is quite important. There's quite a big important difference. And then outside of my peculiar thesis, there's a big tendency to want to attach a narrative of this living human being with the narratives that human being is creating.
Which is so often the way of a biography, if I may say. And often mars a good biography as well.
Yeah, I do feel so. So, with Sondheim, something I knew, actually kind of before I came across that stumbling block, something I knew I wanted not to do for moral reasons was to really tie in his biography, either his temperament or some of the horrific things that happened to him in earlier life. I don't want to symptomize his output as something that has come because he was hurt. I don't think that's necessarily interesting. I certainly don't think it's fair to a writer, living or dead. I think it's almost rude to pry apart someone's backstory in that way. Not in the way that you've done today. I mean...
no, but you make a good point.
to make kind of connections. There's gives and take, pros and cons, that kind of thing. It would be interesting to explore how his relationship with Oscar Hammerstein was important to his work, or his relationship with Bernstein to his work, but not his relationship to his mother. I don't think that's pertinent.
It is interesting to a degree that, I mean, forgive me, you made a very good point there, actually, but I have, to a degree, tried to draw from your personality and your life story.
We do it. It's a natural input, isn't it?
Also, you do it more as we're young, I think. And forgive me, you still have the blessing of being young. Curse you. So I hope I haven't been intrusive in that discussion.
Oh, not at all.
You said something before we started recording which I thought was very interesting, which is actually that the subject that you're pursuing in your PhD has the potential to be sufficiently malleable and broad-ranging, but it is actually a little bit difficult. You're doing a very sensible thing. You are looking for the evidence to come to your conclusion. You are not starting with your conclusion and then looking for the evidence, which makes, forgive me, which sums up your intelligence absolutely, but it is not always the way forward for all people.
Sure. I must admit, I've got a vested interest in there being signs of postmodern activity or thought in sometimes output.
And you must have detected him to come to the idea that it was a theory worth pursuing.
Yes, they've got to have a reasonable hunch, but hopefully I'm not going to ignore all evidence in order to prove that.
I think even from the short time I've known you, I know that you are that, because you seem to me to be intellectually rigorous.
Oh.
Intellectual rigour allows for integrity of character, and therefore output, one hopes.
I'm going to have that put on a magnet and put it on my fridge.
Okay. You will need to find an appropriate picture.
Yes. But yeah, it's something that I think comes to me naturally. Oh, I hate talking about myself in this way, but it's not something that I set out to try and do differently from anybody else. It's just I would naturally analyse and overanalyse things, and that's how I come about my outlook on life and how I comport myself.
Yeah. Very good, by the way.
Yeah. So I guess it's just an evidence-based approach to life and writing and academia.
Yeah. Which is where we came in on this. We've spoken at great depth, and I hope with, in your part, great insight onto a large number of things, and that will come out in your thesis. But that is not yet there, so I'm going to, unfortunately, ask you idiot questions now.
Go for it.
Which is in Sondheim's oeuvre. Just off the top of your head, I know the answer to the first question. I don't know the answer to the second question. Your favourite Sondheim and your least favourite Sondheim show?
Best and worst. My favourite is Company. Obviously, I have that emotional connection to it. As part of my biography as to how that's created myself. But also it's just infinitesimal in its intelligence, in its complexity, in its meaningfulness. There's not a word out of place in Company.
I would like to draw anyone who's listening to this to your website, if I may,
okay.
Which I'm going to ask you to give the details of in a second, but there is a very excellent essay just on the opening number in Company, is there not, where you analyse exactly what you've just said there. The different characters, the words they're saying, the internal rhymes, how they trip, how they fit, how they create a bigger whole, etc., but with such sort of intricate perfection. It is sort of God's watchmaker kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And then, bizarrely, the impression that we get as an audience listening to it is one of tumult, of confusion. You can't possibly comprehend it. It's a cloud of noise.
But it's not a cacophony, I don't think. Do you think it is?
I guess that's
melodically to give it some kind of order. To me.
Yes, I understand where you're coming from, and harmonically that it's supported by that, by having a repeated bass of these alternating chords. I think what I'm trying to say is that it's I don't think you're supposed to understand every single word on your first listening.
That's what CDs are for.
That's what CDs are for. But then surely, I don't know whether he's writing it for the CD, but if he's aiming for the theatre, he knows that it's happening in time. He knows that the audience are not going to get it, not going to understand the close craft that he's poured into it. But for us, kind of parasites, as you say.
I didn't say that about you. About me. Aficionados.
That's quite a nice word. Aficionados, who just love to understand how it works. The clock analogy, we want to take it apart and find out how it works and put it back together again.
And then find it as marvellous as
find it as marvellous. Yes, absolutely.
So what is the website? So
the website is just my professional website, I suppose. It's jamesrobertball.com.
Fair enough.
Standard. And then I've got my blog there where there's stuff.
And the songs from Bang Out of Line.
And the songs from Bang Out of Line, yeah.
But I happen to know that Company is your favourite, but it's a mood thing.
Yes. So Company is my favourite when I'm in that kind of mood, I suppose, with a certain energy. I must admit that this is my equivalent of eating a tub of ice cream is listening to Sunday in the Park with George, particularly if the creative process is taking its toll, if I'm not feeling particularly
when art isn't
energized.
easy.
When art isn't easy, I want to. You want to find some kind of connection. It will be Sunday in the Park, which I would turn to in a much more wistful mood.
Yes. I described it earlier as company is your majority report, and Sunday in the Park is your minority
report.
But that's interesting. It's interesting also that it responds to your mood and your creativity as well. But this is the stupid question, but it can winkle out interesting answers periodically. What's the one you care for least? Might be the best way of putting it.
I'm trying to think
from
of
the main canon.
Sure. I'm trying to think of a whole show that I like least. I know of moments that I'm uncomfortable with. I don't know what you feel about Being Alive, the song, but I'm not a fan.
I prefer the first two options.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, that's how it goes.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that.
I wasn't
I
sure.
like you a lot.
I wasn't sure if I was going to commit some act of heresy.
No. There's very little that can't be discussed.
Okay. So yes, I think we agree on that. But as a whole show, I haven't yet got into A Little Night Music.
Oh.
I think that's my fault rather than A Little Night Music's fault. Or at least I'll reserve judgment entirely. I've not seen it stood up. I know a fair amount of the music for it, and I know I've read plenty of things about it, but I've not experienced it. I'm yet to be touched by it. Maybe the themes are slightly above my head as it stands.
Don't believe that for 1 second.
Well, I don't know.
But it has. It's great for for those of us who still identify ourselves as being great repressed Britons, who don't let our emotions out willy-nilly. That Scandinavian sense of emotional reserve, for me, feels much more European than it feels American, and it is obviously a European story. Yeah. And I resonate with that. I'm just going to give you an option. I'm going to give you my option, because if I was asked which is my least favourite, I'm afraid I've seen it, I've appreciated it, but I will never go to it for enjoyment, and that's Passion.
Oh no, we do disagree.
I thought they would haven't.
I do really like Passion. Gosh, what is
now
it?
You're shocked.
I don't know how to to defend the musical, but what is it? What is it that you don't? What is it that you dislike about it?
Actually, I suspect it's the flip side of what I've just said about A Little Night Music. It is not about reserve.
Okay, it's about passion.
It is indeed. The clue was there. It's like Les Miserables. Yes, it is about passion, and I am always wary of passion. And there is the danger of when you're talking about big emotion, and it's very difficult to conjure big emotion in a narrative of over 2 hours with an interval. And sometimes you have to play the manipulation game, and it does not help me that I find Fosca a particularly manipulative character. I know she's written that way. It's not hidden. It's overt, and I have yet to see the hidden depths of her that our young hero soldier finds. I don't buy it. That's my problem.
Okay.
It does not. It's not emotionally truthful to me. It is for some. It is for many, I'm sure, but it isn't for me. I can't make it work on an emotional dot to dot.
Sure. I can see how that turnaround towards the end is quite sharp.
And it might work if I was reading it as a book, because then you can put a book down and draw it from your narrative and find other things and recontextualise it every day until you find what you want. You can't do that in a live performance.
No. I think what I really like about it is its sound world. It's very strange in its own way, but it's also very strange in different ways, in the ways that the characters are strange.
Yes. That's a lovely sentence.
I forget her name. So, Fosca has kind of sidling, almost whining the music to be passive-aggressive too.
Yes.
Whereas, is it Clara?
It's Clara. It's Light and Dark, isn't it?
Light and Dark,
it's
yeah.
overt as that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Good and bad. Except it isn't, but yeah.
Whereas Clara's is kind of scatty in a different way.
Shallower too.
Shallow, intentional.
I see that. I mean, I don't understand what he's doing with her either. If you want my honest opinion, come on, get out, lad. You can do better. I like the Doctor.
Yes. I think I enjoyed it as a piece of. I've only seen it on DVD.
Oh right. And which performance is that? An American performance?
Yeah, it's Don
Of a Donmar?
No, the performer
Oh, right.
Donna Murphy
Possibly.
as Fosca. I think I sat there with my partner, who is a big fan of big drama, and also a big
With a title like Passion, that sounds like the right way in.
yeah. And also a big fan of letters, like as a construct for writing. He's a writer as well.
Sorry, letters. I'm not getting what you mean.
Which
by
I
that.
believe
Epistolic.
epistolic is what
Yeah.
I mean. That like they're singing letters in some situations.
Right, okay.
So it just kind of ticks his boxes, and so I was sitting there very glad that there was a Sondheim that was ticking his boxes. So maybe that's part of the reason why I like it.
Oh, I see. So so it's extra.
Yeah,
contextual, as it were,
absolutely.
almost. I saw it
Biographical.
at Donmar. I was lucky. I saw it originally when it opened in 89, 87, no, 92, 93 with Michael Ball. Can't fault the performances, just didn't like the show. When I saw it in London, I can't remember where, in the 90s. It was revived about 4 or 5 years ago at the Donmar, and I was reluctantly dragged on to see it. I'm glad I went to see it because it was a much better production. It much more clearly thought through. It worked a lot better, but it still didn't work my emotional way. It doesn't work the way I work emotionally, which is reluctantly. And look, I'm just travelling through some of the sort of byways and highways of Stephen Sondheim. What do you think of some of the bits on the side, like Evening Primrose?
Well, I love that kind of thing as an academic as well as a Sondheim lover. The fact that it's lesser known is a boon, like on top. It's like if you can struggle to find something and then have to order it on Amazon.
There could be a song in that.
Yeah, well,
if you can find me, I'm here. It's said.
And I love those songs.
All of them. Because If You Can Find Me, I'm Here is, I think, the best of the piece.
If You Can Find Me, I'm Here.
And I Remember, of course, is...
I think it's difficult. I appreciate it.
The wind would blow.
You dislike that lyric.
I do like
but,
that. I dislike that lyric, yeah.
It's quite a difficult one to pull off as an actress. So I don't wholeheartedly recommend
Trying,
because it's so...
Next time I'm an actress, I will.
Because it's so poetic in its language, and I feel it's something that is quite hard to get necessarily.
It's a high concept number in many ways.
Oh yes, definitely.
It's a fairly high concept musical, actually, but
But I think it I think it's really well written in that way, unless you count the quite fundamental thing that it doesn't read.
yeah.
But yeah, as someone who sits and thinks about Sondheim, and that's what I like about Sondheim. I think it's a really good one.
And my final question on Sondheim for the moment, although I have a feeling that you and I are going to talk about Sondheim again one day, at least I jolly well hope so, is that, I've been around the block because I'm an old man to, for example, on Saturday night, I was lucky enough to go to the first the world premiere when it was down at the Bridewell, a good number of years ago now, with Tracy Bennett and a few other people in it. And then it was... it's been revived several times since, and it was on in London about 3 or 4 years ago. There are new songs in it, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Sondheim revisited it from one of his earliest pieces from the 50s. He revisited about 2002, added 2 or 3 songs, and one of the great things I love asking my friends is, listen to this, can you spot the new songs? And one they can and one they can't.
Okay.
Have you ever tried that exercise? I mean, you probably intellectually know which songs are and which songs aren't already, and if you don't...
I must say I don't.
Oh, well, that's good. In a way, that's fantastic. In which case, get yourself a 21st century recording.
21st century recording of
Listen to
Sondheim.
it, and we will come back to this point.
I'll try and work out.
I will be delighted to know if you can tell. And therefore, I won't tell you why they could tell one and why they couldn't tell the other, or at least so we thought. That could be a cliffhanger for another.
Oh, okay. In terms of, I don't know whether you were going to move on to an almost moral element to it, whether someone should be doing that. With other examples being the song "Suddenly" in the Les Mis film, and then I think they put it in and it's the words kind of taking stuff out that might be seen as important. I don't want to say something. I know people are going to like burn down the internet if we say this kind of thing out loud. But I actually liked that they cut "No More" in the song in the Into the Woods film. I thought the scene was very efficient, which.
More was needed.
Yeah, No More was needed.
No More wasn't needed.
Yeah. Whereas No More is quite dense. It's quite wistful. It's quite difficult to understand the meaning.
Yep.
And then if we're Hollywoodizing this musical, which I think we should, and we should embrace the fact that it's going to be different for a film.
It's always more concise and trimmed, isn't it?
Yeah,
They
but
are.
it
It's really
would have to be.
that.
yeah. With maybe, in some ways, that was too Hollywoodized,
Yes.
shall we say.
No, you can. Go right ahead and say it, because I agree.
But I was really pleased with the Into the Woods film, because I thought the changes they made were intelligent and important.
But you've asked me the question about, is it right to change pieces once in...
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Haha. Yes. Why not? I think it continues to be a living, breathing organism. Theatre, any kind of theatre, is maybe unique in that it's never physically the same
Yeah. Every night.
every night.
Yeah.
It couldn't possibly... I mean,
can't
talking-
classify it properly.
No. And so, I think if you have more ideas on it, then it's worth exploring. If people care, why not?
I always think that the Into the Woods is an interesting example of a developing story as it goes along, because certainly in recent years people have been much more struck by the idea of their... I mean, you will know the original idea, at least one of the possible original ideas was that we're in fact seeing the baker's child, who is the narrator, or it was conceived to be the narrator, and then that was chopped by James Levine quite early on. But everyone likes the idea, they really love the idea, and they try to sort of crowbar that in, and the Into the Woods in the Open Air Theatre of London,
Regent's Park,
which you may have seen, tried to bring something of that in. The problem is you then get a very unusual situation whereby usually they tried to do that there, and the child had a torch, I seem to remember, so you had to accept the child as a contemporary child. And then there was this sudden suggestion that only one generation ago they were more or less a medieval fairy tale state. So just looking at it from a development of a society, it seemed a little brusque.
Did you see that live?
I did, yes.
Yes. So,
with real trees.
Sure, real trees. I only saw it on the Theatre Direct, the recording, and so you get a much closer look at everybody. And he's fully modern dress. And then when the baker comes on, spoilers, towards the end, but kind of as his silent father, whether or not it's the same person, he's now in more or less modern dress. I think his coat's changed. I think I read it as the show of Into the Woods, other than the narrator, is happening in the kid's mind, and although the baker is not literally the baker, it's his dad who's taken that role for the narrative.
Yeah, I don't think they are actually able to do what the original plan was, just because I don't think
given the actual text that they're working with.
It's moved too far from that to allow that to happen. As I say, I think they're trying to draw something of that, and that seemed to be the case. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think you have to accept it that way. But it goes to show, and the latest film, as you say, so it's continually reiterating itself in that sense. Oh, James, I think that's probably the end of the conversation.
Oh,
but
goodness.
You have been fascinating, and I would love to do a lot more. But for the time being, if people are interested in seeing extracts from your shows and what you're doing, remind us again how they can do that.
Oh, that would be on my website, which is jamesrobertball.com.
And you tweet.
Oh, I do. I think that's at JR_ball.
But they'll find you quite
Oh,
easily,
yeah.
won't they?
I'll just search me and it'll be fine.
Absolutely. James, I wish you huge success. I hope that Bang Out of Line ends up in a situation where I can see it.
Oh,
and
cheers.
possibly
Yeah.
this year, if
That'd be
that's
lovely.
possible. If you can do that, please. Thank you.
I'll try.
Yes. But I wish you success with everything that you do, including your thesis. And if you feel able, I'd be love to talk to you again.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
that'd
it
be
would
great.
just great, yes. James, all power to you up.
Yeah, goodbye.
Thank you. Musical talk. Well, there we are. James Robert Ball there again. I really enjoyed talking to James. That conversation went on a lot longer than either of us expected, but the reason for that was we enjoyed what we were talking about and we enjoyed each other's company. I do hope I'll have a chance to speak to James again in the future. But it's probably not going to be until next year, because James is currently in the West End, making his debut as a musical director in the West End, with the Blues Brothers Christmas Special, which is on until the 10th of January 2016 at the Arts Theatre in Leicester Square. So if you want to go and see James displaying just one side of his many, many talents, then you can do so. And James's website is jamesrobertball.com, and you can also follow him on Twitter at jr_ball. Well, we're heading very quickly towards the end of the year. There's only 2 or 3 more episodes of Musical Talk left in 2015. But I do hope you'll join us again next week for an episode about something very different and yet still about musicals. But until then, I've just got time to say one word. Actually, I've got time to say plenty of words, particularly if I'm going on for a week, but I won't. I'll ration it to just the one word. You know what it is, it'll come as no surprise, but I'm going to say it anyway. Goodbye. This episode of Musical Talk edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2015. And don't forget to follow Musical Talk on Facebook and Twitter. And you can follow me on Twitter too, at Musical Talk Thos.
Okay. I really like Company.
Yeah. And you said you fell in love. That was the one that...
Sure. Yeah, so it's got a deep emotional connection to me, both that first time I saw Sondheim tour, and then...
Good Times Company.
Good times. And then also, as part of my undergrad degree, it's an important piece to me, but I have also absolutely emotionally connected to it in its actual... Sorry.
Give it just a second.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. I'll think about what I was trying to say.
I'm going to be complaining on the way out because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I can get the duty manager.
Well, we paid how much money for these tickets and we can't even get a drink without going down, 3-4 levels?
Yeah.
And have you seen the queues?
I
You
can
lose
imagine.
half the gig. Well, somebody above your head doesn't care. Quite frankly, sorry.
Well, it's someone above my head.
Yes, I always go to gigs for the drink.
Yeah, of course.
way-
Part
no
of the
way
price of
getting
the ticket, isn't it?
That's so ridiculous, really. We'll always...
Okay, so yeah.
We were on Best and Worst.